Yeah, I remember picking up this book many moons ago at my library that I volunteered at. When Sir Arthur Conan Doyle created Sherlock Holmes, this was based on Sidney, his professor. And his professor Sidney was like, I think he was, I don't know if he was an anatomy professor, a science professor of some type. And he would teach Sir Arthur Conan Doyle reasoning, deduction. So to him, the professor in his life, in his college years, was Sherlock Holmes, and he was Watson. Watson was based on Doyle. And so he created these series of stories that would appear in like magazines, like not exactly like dime novels, but in articles, right? So you'd open up the magazine from the 19th century, because the 19th century really was a time of authors like Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and E.B. White, I think. Isn't that? No, I'm thinking of. I have to think of the author of Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass, right? Um, I'm thinking of the Brothers Grimm, where Little Red Riding Hood was killed by the wolf, but that's, I think, a couple of centuries before that. But aside from that, the original Sherlock Holmes was portrayed in here, in these words. Now, when you get to, if you were to read this book, I mean, you can get this book for a couple of bucks. You can download it. You can put it on your Kindle. Okay, the book, I mean, it's that old that you can find it anywhere and anytime. But I bought it at the library. And when you get to the final problem, in which Moriarty and Holmes fight, or supposedly they fight on that waterfall, right? And neither one is seen or heard from ever again, and it tears Watson to the bone. It's like it terrified him. Like, here was this great man who solved mysteries every week, or every day, or every month. I'm not sure how often these stories came about, but Doyle had a set number of stories in mind. And he said, Holmes dies at the waterfall in the final problem. Well, there were letters and say, oh, please, no, no, don't kill off Sherlock Holmes. We love Sherlock Holmes. We bring him back, bring him back. So brought him back. And sure enough, he was brought back. And they were more stories. But they probably were not as good as the final problem and all the ones that preceded it. The Red-Headed League and others. There were so many other stories that people in my family liked the stories. A timeless classic to be read over and over. And yeah, I mean, there were all kinds of villains and scoundrels and bunco artists and thieves and Holmes would, and murderers, and Holmes would stake them out, try to find out who the bad guys were. And that was part of his story, as part of his reasoning deduction. But Holmes was never the same. And any new stories with Sherlock Holmes were never going to be as good as when Doyle made them. So when Doyle compromised his work, it was okay, Holmes is alive. He didn't really die in the waterfall, but there he is. In a not so perfect example, of course, he was not the creator Bob Kane was, but when Christopher Nolan did Batman Begins, I believe, and a lot of people did, that he had always intended to be two movies, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And then he did The Dark Knight Rises, which felt a little off for, it had to be a trilogy. We need a trilogy. The corporation says, we need a trilogy. We love trilogies. Force the trilogy to come out of your ass, Christopher Nolan. So there you go. He only wanted two movies. One for Batman to begin, and the second one for Batman to end, because of the Joker and Two-Face. And then that brings us to Superman. Now, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created prototypes of Superman. Detectives, a bald dude with mental powers, a guy who didn't, could fly around by jumping from a high place. And then through all their hard work from Slam Bradley and Dr. Occult, they came up with the Spectre. I think the Spectre would come later, but who knows? The Spectre might have been in their pencils and stuff and such. They came up with Superman, a guy with a circus outfit. It was like a circus outfit, pajamas, but he could fly. He could have all these, extraordinary powers. And for a while, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created written and drawn Superman for a while, for like 10 years or more. And then Joe Shuster's health was failing. Jerry had to go, he got drafted. And somewhere, I think they had taken Superboy from him without him knowing, and Joe Shuster told him about it. And it wasn't until we get to the death of Superman, which I thought, looking back, because I picked up this collection of Superman stories, and I thought, they should have just made the cover deceitful. Like, you think it's going to go the way you think it is when you read page one, and it really doesn't. And the ending would have been a complete surprise. This was Jerry Siegel's last story, and it shows Supergirl. And I think this was the basis of Lex Luthor being a businessman. And, here he is, the gangsters are talking, and this is where he tricks them. He's like, have you lost your mind? That's like, how simple it was to outwit you. And he makes them watch too. And he's like, oh, God, don't give up hope. It's like, I don't think so. Let me just turn up the power of the rays. And that was the end of it. And Jerry Siegel was like, that's it. You won't have me to kick around anymore. And then Superman dies. And it's not a robot. And there you go. Your friend is dead. You can have him back now that he's dead. That's a line that I wrote for my stories. I'll go back into my stories in a moment. But yeah, this was it. And then at some point he gets punished and gets sent into the Phantom Zone, because that was the end of that. And Supergirl would continue the legacy. It's only an imaginary story, everyone, but, that was Jerry Siegel's goodbye. He was done. He had put one or two lawsuits during the time he was working for DC Comics, National Comics back then, and that was it. And Superman would continue on through other writers and artists, just like Batman movies would continue on, just like the Sherlock Holmes stories. When you think of the prequels, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and the original trilogy, these are George Lucas's movies. As far as he is concerned, it was about those 6 movies. And Dave Filoni added a bit. Dark Horse Comics writers and artists added a little bit. And then Disney continues to impale it with mixed points of views in Ahsoka. Is Ahsoka supposed to be good or not? Somebody will tell me if Ahsoka is that good. I know episode 5 was good, but what about the rest of it? Is it holding up? And so if anybody wanted to, you could watch these 6 movies over and over again without Rogue One, without the Dark Plagueis novels, without the Knights of the Old Republic stories and games, without the cartoon Clone Wars. But Clone Wars was partly because of George. Dave Filoni did some of his own wacky writing. Rebels, that's completely Dave Filoni. Resistance, everybody remember Star Wars Resistance? I have yet to watch all those cartoons. Maybe I should watch it for an experiment. And that's about it. I mean, there were so many. And for me, I like some of the Dark Horse stuff. Now, the question is, do you define the creation only by the creator? Do you define the work only by the creator? Does all that matter to you? Or once you get past the 6 movies, you won't watch and you'll read anymore? Where do you stop, right? Because some people might be purists, but some other people are like, well, wait a minute. If George Lucas isn't writing or directing or somehow creating this, then what am I going to look at it for? If Jerry Siegel is no longer alive, why am I looking at Superman? If Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is not around, why should I look at Sherlock Holmes? Why should I look at any of it? In the case of He-Man, Mark Taylor had just drawn all the concepts, but the stories would be later on put up by other people. And do you look at those original writers? And honestly, it's like I say, it's like some people, like some characters like Sonic the Hedgehog have a little paragraph and a cartoon description by the original people. But then you have a next generation of writers and artists who actually write out full-fledged stories, and you go by them. So George Lucas, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Bob Kane and Bill Finger, Steve Ditko and Stan Lee for Spider-Man. Do you stop after a point? Do you keep on going? Because keep in mind, like with Sherlock Holmes, there was an ending. But then he had to backpedal the ending because people were like, no, don't kill off Sherlock Holmes. We like Sherlock Holmes. So that was that. And when I go back to my stories, this is the first character I ever created called Skull Oh God, I forgot his name. Holy shit! Okay. Oh no 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 no. Out 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 out. I'm not. Oh my God, I forgot his name. I'm sorry, everyone. This was made in 1995. This character, and I forgot his name. God damn it. That's how stupid I am. I'm an idiot. Let's go down. So these are the characters I created here. Skullbone, Death Skull. I forgot his name. I truly, truly did. It was so long ago. These are the circus freaks. There's Spitmutt. There's Ashcan. There's Electro or Sparks. These are the three original characters. You can see he's in white. Here he is here. These are my original characters that I still own. And then here are the Outcasts, later on the Outcasters, which took different shapes over the years. Can I move any further down? Is that it? Is there not more in this? That's it. 2001. 23 years of story, and we didn't get any further than 2001. That's strange. That's strange to me. I could have sworn that I had more than this. Maybe I didn't get a lot of views, and maybe that's why I stopped. But these are the first parts of my work. You could go on my on Amazon and find things. There's my second book. So, I mean, like years and years and years of working hard on my characters have led up to this moment. And didn't sell very much. $36.99, $29.95. There's my book still. So, if I can click on it, I'll click on it. That's about it. I mean, my characters are who they are. Nobody else has taken over it. Nobody else has control of it. I do at this time. And I am proud of the work I've done. Since 1995, I set out as an artist to create characters who were hideous, strange, and did not fit within the normal boundaries of modern society. The Circus Freaks, my first creations, are such examples of humanizing. Can we see more? Of dehumanizing humans, placing them in a world where they are not accepted by the majority and must push their way uphill to gain power. After 15 years, and it would be maybe about 25 years or more, of creating many people, places, and things based on real-world publishing books, including this one, I came to an epiphany. Who you are in relation to someone else depends not on skin color, age, religion, sexual preference, language, biology, country, or planet. These short stories contain individual lives of those you are familiar with in one social category or another, as opposed to those of your neighbor, family member, significant partner, your enemies, and those unlikely you've never met. In the end, a world, a galaxy of prosperity comes with the efforts of all who are related because they are unrelated, and that's exactly what the book is about. So that was my philosophy to my creations. George Lucas had his own philosophy. Frank L. Baum had his philosophy to Oz books. I think he had the same problem with trying to continue the Oz books because children would write him to continue those books. Sherlock Holmes, Doyle, Jerry Siegel wrote whatever he could. So let me know what you judge a creation by. If somebody else wrote my work, would you read it more or less?